Good afternoon, Madam Speaker, ministers, premiers, ambassadors, distinguished guests, friends. Some of you may not be friends. The mood is too heavy in here. Got to take it down a bit. Welcome to all of you. We are exceptionally proud and honored to be hosting this for the fourth time. And thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you for honoring us with your presence. And we had to extend it. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger every year. I have two problems today. The first is that I have to pay these directors a hell of a lot more money for saying all those nice things about me. The second is I didn't recognize myself in what they said. But thank you for Dennis, Cello, Wallace. Thank you for the kind words and for relating your experience of the Second Jala Group. It's also good for me to listen to what you're saying and to reflect on our journey together. I have a second bigger problem, and that is that this morning I was meeting with the editor of a competing newspaper. It was an off-the-record meeting, so I can't tell you which newspaper. And I said to him, why do you guys write so much nonsense, you know? And why do you always put my picture on the front page? And he said, Doc, the truth is, because it sells more papers. So I said, shit, I'm going to tell my editors to put me on the front page. So I think that's what we need to do. And then I said to someone the other day, in fact, my mom always says to me, she's at the back here, she says, you're always on ENCA. They really like you, Iqbal. I said, yes, they do. And then someone said to me, that's linked to Saktu that owns ENCA, that's a shareholder in one of our group companies, said to me, Doc, you know, ENCA has a monitor. Whenever they mention your name, like people tune in by the millions. And in fact, there was an incident reported, apparently, at a Virgin gym, that one of the people was on this treadmill, and he had his earphones on, which is made for one of our companies, I think, Puleng or headsets or one of those things. And they put my name on, and he fell off the bloody treadmill. So it's a real challenge when they speak about you, and you read about it, and you see it, etc. It's a problem because I walk down the streets and I work everywhere, and I admit almost exclusively black people come up to me and say, Doc, can we take a selfie? Can we do this? Can we do that? And it's like, you know, we are there with you, and everywhere everybody goes and says, we're with you. We're with Second Jala. We know what you stand for. And I always say to them, ours is a non-racial struggle. What Madiba gifted us in our country is non-racialism. And our liberation dividend is that of non-racialism. And we must never confuse the importance of affirmative action, black economic empowerment, and the upskilling of our people with non-racialism. Non-racialism must be the standard barrier by which we all stand or fall, because it's only when you recognize that it's not color that matters, it's the value systems which matters, it's the foundation on which you build your own life and the life of your community and a country that matters. And that foundation must be inclusive of all of South Africa's people. But that foundation, thank you, that foundation must take into account the historic inequalities, the challenges that our country faces, and the enormous difficulties in transitioning to meet a constitution and a Bill of Rights which is one of the best in the world. But without practically bringing our people to a level of moderate prosperity, as the Chinese like to say, without doing that, a constitution and a Bill of Rights is meaningless, because people will ignore the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. In fact, we see it even today, because some of the media houses, our competitors, there's no surprises there, don't offer me any rights. Our journalists are trained to always ask the other side's point of view. We are never afforded that opportunity to give our point of view, which is a basic fundamental disregard for our constitutional right, for the rights that we have fought for so bravely over the last few decades. So we have built a large group, the largest black group in this country, unquestionably the largest black group in this country. And we have built it without exploiting the resources of our country. We have not built our group on mining. We have built our group on the intellectual capital of South Africa's people. And we have created the opportunity for black and white talent to merge and create all those companies that you see. We employ more software engineers than most companies that I know in this country. We are on 40 countries on the African continent. Our technologies are pervasive throughout the African continent. And our technologies are global. But more importantly, it's about job creation. The best way to bring dignity to a people is to create jobs. The best way to embrace the new economy is to skill people up to be able to do that. I'm so delighted Jacques Ludic, the professor, is here, whose company has partnered us in the area of artificial intelligence, the top AI company on the African continent. And Dennis jokingly spoke about the book, The Fall, by Professor Scott Galloway of Columbia University in New York, who wrote this brilliant book about the multi-sided platform in new economies. But it's a serious issue, this. It's a very, very serious issue. I'll tell you why. And I'll tell you why this year's theme is about technology 4.0, and why it's important for Africa Technology 4.0. We're a brilliant continent. Why? We have young people, and by 2030, we'll have the most young people in the world in absolute terms. Okay. But those young people are not going to be employed in the mining industry or the manufacturing sector. That horse is bolted. That is gone. We are not going to be able to compete with economies that have invested heavily in manufacturing and used the resource dividend to do that. We are not going to be able to compete even in resource economies, because there's a global slowdown, and the requirements of the world for resources is not going to increase as rapidly as a decade and a half ago. So we're facing a very different world. So what must 60% of the African continent's young people do? They cannot sit at home, they cannot be unemployed, and it's the most undignified thing. If you're bright, young, talented, aspirational, and you have to sit at home without a job, without the opportunity to participate in the new economy. But young people are the people that are able to skill up very quickly in the digital economy. And young people are the ones that can not just take the African economy beyond social media, but can take it into the commercial space. That can actually ensure that Africa's economy belongs to Africans. That content and multi-sided platforms and commercial viability and sustainability and capital or revenues generated through the participation of Africans in the technology economy remains in Africa. I'm very proud of the fact that we all use Google, and I speak to Google. I say what I want, and it's great. And we all use Facebook, and we all buy on Amazon. Well, I hope you buy from our e-commerce company, Loot, and not Amazon. And we all participate in all sorts of platforms, Instagram, I've forgotten them now, LinkedIn, etc. But what is the fundamental problem with this? The fundamental problem is that all those jobs in the technology economy is created outside of the African continent. The second problem is all the data, because data is the new oil. Data determines the future. All that data rests outside the African continent. And so, historically, Africa was exploited for its mineral wealth. Over the next 2 decades, Africa will be a bystander, a passenger in the technology economies, because it does not control the multi-sided platforms. It does not control the data. It does not control the ability to commercialize the content and data that emerges out of these platforms, because they controlled everywhere else. And that makes Africans more poorer. And that is a recipe for complete social disaster. And that is not something. If you love your country, and you love your people, and you love the continent, and you believe in it, and your mindset is here, and you see yourself as setting the future and the standards and the foundations for generations to come, well beyond the time that you will not be here, then you have to think very differently. It's not enough to have the mining indaba in Cape Town and the world's investors come to Cape Town and mining companies, because that kind of wealth generation, or that horse is bolted a long time ago. South Africa's economy is built on mining. South Africa's wealth is built on mining. South Africa continues to look at mining for its future. But mining is not going to solve the problem of job creation, skills development for young people. Mining has got 2 key issues with it. The first is that it's exploitative in its nature of labor. And that just is the structure of mining wherever you go in the world. The second is that it's mechanized increasingly, which makes job creation almost impossible. I'm not suggesting for one moment we mustn't mine. Not by any means. I mean, that would be silly of anybody to do that. What I'm suggesting is that's not the future of our continent and of our country. Our future is to take these young people under the ages of 30, that are 60% of the African population, and to set up regional centers to train them up in data science, software engineering, analytics, in computer science. And you don't have to have a formal university degree. Look, I'm a businessman, I'm just a doctor. Okay. And I hope I've succeeded to an extent out there. The point is, it's nonsense to suggest that you need to have every young... Why are we having the crisis at the institutions? It's because we're not creating space for these young people. They work hard, they come from trying backgrounds, they try and find a future for themselves. There's no jobs. We take in as many interns as we can. We employ directly more than 5,500 people, and through our investing companies, 25,000 people. We try and take in about 500 interns. It's nothing at the end of the day. It doesn't even begin to touch the number of young people emerging from school in one small province of our country. So if you think that investment into energy and oil and big refineries and all of these things is going to solve our problem, you're missing the point completely. You're missing the point completely of the new economy. The only way to do this is for our capital markets to start investing in technology companies and in multi-sided platform companies. It's the only way, so that we train young people to participate in those economies, so that when we commercialize it, the capital remains on our continent and is able to fulfill the growth of our continent. That is the dream of Sekunjalo. That is our dream. So if you're ignorant and you don't understand that, you don't understand that Uber, for example, loses $400 million every quarter, and to date has lost $11 billion, but is valued at $120 billion. Or ByteDance, for example, the Chinese company, TikTok, if you watch the videos, Okay, lost $1 billion, $1.5 billion, but is today valued at $75 billion. If you don't understand that WeWork, which is using Internet of Things and sensors and app programs, the world's largest mobile working company, has lost about, I think, $1.5 billion, but it's worth $50 billion. So if you don't understand how these economic models work, you make a fundamental mistake. If you try and say mining is about cash flow, NAV, sure, retail. We've invested in all of those businesses, by the way. In our group, we're in telecommunications, power, retail, mining, media. We're in every one of those businesses. And they're fantastic. They give us great dividends every year. But we took the risk. And we've invested billions in the technology space, at high risk to ourselves, huge losses to ourselves. Of course, I can take that money and go buy a jet like some of you over here. I don't know why you're not laughing. It means you all have jets. All these fancy toys that people play with. Instead, I and my family and my daughter sitting there have elected to take our profits, plow it back into buying businesses, digital businesses, technology businesses, skilling up Africans, creating centers of excellence so Africans are the masters of their own destiny. And we do not say this to the exclusion of Europe, America, China, or any other country or continent. In fact, we say it in collaboration with you. Our approach is to build Africa for the future. Our approach is to build the platforms so that Africans can participate in that economy. And Africans, and the truth is, the capital markets, have to begin to understand this. And it's no use putting a young woman on ETV. I feel sorry for that young journalist. I won't name a name. She doesn't have a clue of what she's talking about because she doesn't understand these things. But make it your duty if you're the editor of these television stations or competitors. Make it your duty because you are retarding the growth of the African continent. You know what is the greatest corruption ever? When you believe that the business model, which is doomed, which is extractive economy of resources, is the future of this country and this continent. You are corrupting the minds of people when you do that. The truth, you always have to tell the truth. Amilcar Cabral said this, never lie to your people. Tell the truth every single time. The truth is, unless we invest in the technology economy of the future, our young people are doomed. Your children, my children, and the children of our children. We will become slaves to a new economy. And so we must be brave, we must have courage. And we are pioneers as Second Jalo. We are pioneers in charting the way forward to get our people to understand the importance of the new economy. And when you're a pioneer, you're always going to be seen to be different. History has shown us that. Pioneers in history, whether it is in religion, whether it is in science, whether it is in culture, whether it is in art, are always scoffed on. Picasso's art was scoffed on at some point in time. But the point is, you must not be afraid. You must consistently have the courage to speak your mind and to tell people what is right. You know why? Because the young people of our nation and of our continent deserve that. Because it is dishonest to try and give them hope where there is no hope. Because if you don't invest in the technology economy, if you don't skill them up, if you don't give them the opportunities to create 100,000 technology jobs at least on our continent in the next few years, then we have failed. It doesn't matter how rich you are, how wealthy you are, what you think of yourself. But if you can't embrace that kind of future, then you are robbing our young people of their own future. Our group is brave. Its people are brave. Sometimes I think they're crazy to work for me. And you must be a bit crazy to work for me, right? Because it's crazy people that want to create a future that all of us can live in, that dream of a different future. The Imagine Awards, our family for 20 years has funded 7 foundations, more than 60 million young children through the programs. We've never once announced it to anybody because we took a decision that our philanthropic activities must be about doing and not telling. We have funded more bursary programs, more music academies, more teachers, more schools, including the Cape Town Jazz Festival as a philanthropic project of our group. But at the end of the day, it's not about today. It's about the future. It's about being brave enough to tackle the future. And I was listening to the speakers before me, and I was thinking, wow, we have succeeded. Because people understand what we're doing. They understand the mission of our group. They understand the value systems of our group. They understand that when, as the youngest chief executive on the JSC, when I knew nothing about business, having left medicine after practicing for 10 years, at the insistence of Madiba and Jake Skerwell, who was the chairman of Sekunjalo, who was the director general of Madiba's office, at that time, I said, I love medicine. I love being a doctor. I love people. I said, no, you're wasting your time. We need to have black business people that are not going to be greedy. Black business people that are going to build the economy in order to create space for other black business people. And I said, hell, that's, as a socialist, that's a hell of a big, what do you call this, task that you've given me. And Wallace is correct. We went there with this dream of creating a different society, of using our resources to create a different society, to imagine a better world, as John Lennon says. Just imagine where everyone has dignity, everyone lives in peace. And peace doesn't come because you say it. Peace doesn't come with policemen and women. Peace doesn't come with an army. Peace comes when you lift the living conditions of ordinary people that they can live with dignity. Because peace and dignity are the same parts of just, or different parts of the same coin. Absolutely the same. And if you don't understand that dignity comes with opportunity and employment, and having the basic needs, as I'm a doctor, as Maslow's hierarchy says to you, you satisfy the basic needs of a people. So, I have a message to our detractors, and take it very seriously from me. You are not dealing with Dr. Survé. You are dealing with every single person that is part of this organization and part of this dream. Everyone lives it, believes in it, embodies it, and is prepared to make sure that as Africans, we fulfill our mandate and our duty. If Madiba gave us nothing, he gave us the responsibility to care for others by his own example, because he threw away his responsibility to himself and his family. Madiba did that. That was the liberation dividend, not anything else. That simple fact that unselfishly he gave up his life for the people of this country, the people of the continent, and in truth for the people of the world. That is what we have to continue to do. And we have to continue to make sure that we invest in technology, we give dignity to people, we skill up our people, and we build a united South Africa, non-racial, irrespective of religion, irrespective of gender. By the way, we have the most women of any organization in its top structures. Just for your information. Okay? That doesn't happen by accident. Okay? So that's the kind of future that we want. That's the kind of future we must desire. That's the kind of future that the President has to address today. In SONA, he has to address the fundamental issue that the future of the country does not lie with old corporates whose way of thinking is outdated and is based on extractive economies, retail and property. He's got to believe and understand that if he's going to make a difference to our country and our people and our continent, then he's got to attract investment into technology companies. Our capital markets have got to understand this. They've got to understand, as the Harvard Business Review case study showed in February last year, that the new economy requires a different mindset, a different modeling system altogether. Ladies and gentlemen, I did not wish to be too serious today, and I did not wish to say so much as I've said today. But I was inspired by my colleagues before me, Dennis, Wallace, and Cello. But I want to add one more thing, if I may. If I may, Speaker, I hope you allow me to. It is shocking when I hear how this wonderful man of incredible integrity, the General Secretary of FEDUSA, Dennis, is handled by the media. So what did Second Jalo do? Let's look at this. When we listed IO Technologies, a 15 billion company, the executive team came to me and said, Dr. Survé, you always talk about broad-based and inclusive empowerment. And every single transaction that we've done, we've included the unions, civil society, other black groupings, even universities, NGOs, etc. And they said, what do you think we should do in this listing? And I said, let's invite the workers of this country, along with women's groupings, civil society organizations, and others, to become shareholders of IO Technology Solutions, which is a subsidiary of ours. Okay. And I said, let's allocate 10%. And then they said, well, Dr. Survé, should they pay 2.5 million workers and the investment companies, should they pay the same price as all the other investors? And we had raised 5.3 billion in commitments for this listing, of which we took 4.3 billion. I said no. The problem with empowerment, when we listed our group, the first one of our 3 public companies, on the stock exchange in 1999, there were about 40 black companies and hundreds of companies that were not listed out there. They've all disappeared. If you want to count the number of black companies on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange that are black-owned, black-controlled, predominantly have no debt, etc., you'll find less than 5. That's disgraceful. 25 years into our young democracy, 25 years when 86% of the population is black, that you have 5 companies. Don't believe the lies and statistics that they tell you that it's more than that. You can't count MTN as a black company. Get serious. Okay? That's just fidgeting with the numbers. Let's get to the hard core of it. And the hundreds of black companies out there that don't exist anymore. New Africa Investments, my good friend and doctor as well, Tato Motlana, was one day worth about 15 billion, gone. Real Africa Investment, Don Nube, good friend as well, gone. Velapanda doesn't exist anymore. Okay. And I can go on. These were icons of black economic empowerment. Yes, they were not perfect, but black business people were never allowed to participate under apartheid in the economy. So we had to learn as we went along. So I said to the management team and the board of directors of IO and AEI, make empowerment meaningful. Give the shares to the trade unions and black groupings at R1.50. And they almost wanted to lynch me because they said, Doctor, you're giving away. By doing that, you're giving away almost 2 billion. I said, yes, it's fine. Because our people are tired of these fancy schemes where they participate in empowerment schemes and 5 years later, they've got zero value. And they're even worse off than when they started. Not just because they have no material value, but because the hope that was created, because it was dependent on stock prices increasing and all of these things, etc. And because there's debt always in these things. So we made a commitment to empower 2.5 million workers in this country by giving them the shares at R1.50. The fact that we placed it with institutions at 43 Rand is irrelevant. That was our decision. We gave our shares away. We diluted because we believe that is the inclusive economy that this country needs. And I apologize to no one for doing that. In fact, the only problem with some of these trade unionists that are complaining, and ENCA, is that they did not get the opportunity to participate in the scheme. That's the fact. Okay. And we'll continue to do this because we are deeply and genuinely committed to real empowerment and not superficial empowerment in this country, because our people must benefit from all of these things. And as I'm concluding, because Lance is approaching, and he might just lance me with something. As I'm concluding, ladies and gentlemen, take off your hats to this man. He's a wonderful man. He's given his life to the trade union movement. Dennis George, take off your hats to him. A man of absolute integrity. A man that deserves to be commended and not treated in the way that he is by ENCA and these other people that are disgraceful in the way they treat good South Africans. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that I've given you a glimpse of our thinking. And as I said to you, it's not my thinking. I'm just the custodian of this beautiful project called Second Jalo. This project is about South Africans. It's principally about all of our employees, our customers, our partners, our relations out there. But it's a project of all South Africans. It is the Second Jalo project. It's the project of the new South Africa. Look amongst you. This is the new South Africa. This is what Madiba dreamed for. And as long as I can, and my colleagues can, we will make sure that Madiba's dream comes true. Thank you very much. Okay.